Hello and welcome to Clawful Evil, Probable Claws, a show where we discuss Wildbow's second most bully-filled work. I'm your conniving hostess Kippos.
And I'm your very villainous hostess, Vice Versailles. In this debriefing, we're covering chapters 3.2 and 3.3.
And oh my god, what a pair of chapters. I mean, Valentina's perspective continues to deliver in the best possible way. She's so much fun.
I genuinely did not know what to expect from a Valentina arc. Last episode I talked about how I was thinking maybe it would be a children's arc and just sort of a general perspective. And what had me thinking that way was something that you pointed out, which is that Valentina, the way that she explored that new name, gave the impression that she had like a pretty barren sense of self.
Yeah.
And so I foolishly thought that meant that we weren't going to have a very intricate and fascinating perspective to live in for a whole arc. Golly, was I wrong?
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, this has been like amazing, and like we're gonna get into this a couple of times, I think. But I mean, the end of 3.3. Oh my god, like so juicy. And like it's just
juicy.
Juicy. That's
Juicy's
the word.
The word you're going to use.
Oh yeah.
It's not tomato juice.
No, tomato juice specifically. Yeah. It's just it's so good, and it's like just the way that the entire back half of 3.3 is written, where you're getting like basically a couple of paragraphs of a situation, and then you're just skipping to another point in time, and it's not necessarily chronologically, because we're skipping back and forward a little bit as well. And then you get into like it's just kind of open straight with like the knife like cutting through fabric and then face. And it's like, what the fuck is it? Like, what is happening? And she's in this like excellent, like crazy dissociative state, and is just not thinking about what she's doing or why she's doing.
A dear friend of mine described this scene at the box cutter painting as like eating. Like satisfying and mechanical, and within that grasp of what was going on, this dissociative, mechanical, this will make me feel better. Now that it's done, I'm satisfied. I'm relieved. If that final scene is eating, the entirety of 3.3 is getting us hungry, and just battering down Geo and then Valentina, and eroding all the strength that she has until like the jumping in when we do, where she hasn't even premeditated it exactly. She's just sort of like, we as readers wake up to the fact that it's happening.
It's so beautiful.
It's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Shall we get into the chapter summaries?
Yeah, let's do that. Okay. So in 3.2, Valentina becomes a single teenage mother for a bit before getting some help from Josie. They find Ben taking creep shots of children at the school, but get reassured that he totally has a good reason for it. Valentina then returns home to break a man's neck and asks Highland for some damn help.
And in 3.3, Highland pops around for a chat and to give our new friend a quick and snappy massage. The two of them work together to sell the idea that Highland came to their house to target Mia and Carson and is definitely not involved with either of them. We learn a lot more about Valentina's high school hellscape and old home purgatory, and the real reason she doesn't call Davy her dad anymore, before she carves open Addie's face in a dissociative state. Whoops! Whoopsies!
Yeah, I mean, they were fucking amazing chapters. Like, yeah, the brutality of 3.2 with the trap, and then we get a bit more in 3.3 about like this poor delivery driver who's like this like 18-year-old kid just trying to do his dang
Caught
job.
In the crossfire.
Yeah, and it's so heartbreaking for everyone, really, like everyone involved. It's just brutal.
There's this theme throughout these chapters of freedom, I think, and that conversation with the delivery driver, where he's given this these options that he could be released now, and it'd be a very difficult. He would have to will himself to forget, and they need to trust him. Or he could allow himself to be contained, and then they'd reimburse him for the service of staying out of their hair, basically. And he chooses like he asks for freedom,
Yeah.
because he just wants it to be over.
And he just wants safety, really.
Just wants safety. And the idea that I think is put forward there is that it's really hard to sweeten the pot enough that someone will choose to suffer more than to just have whatever pain they have over with now. And to take that energy into what happens with Addie is, I mean, it helps us feel a great deal of sympathy for what happens. But that poor Boxco employee is one thing. The treatment of Boxco employees is another. Imagine the tip economy getting so bad that you have to tip your customers so that they don't give you a bad review.
That's genuinely so disgusting. Like, that entire little section with that guy is fucking foul. Like, not just from like a like a quote unquote like Karen style, like oh, you was like slightly inconvenienced me, I'm gonna like try and make sure you lose your job, fuck you, kid. But then like also the like, oh, how are you gonna make it worth it to me, the fucking grown-ass man says to basically the child, like
says to the child who, as we learn, has a history with that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's just it's fucked. It's so disgusting. Like, yeah, fucking sleazy ass man. Ugh.
I think one thing that 3.3 does in spades is recontextualize Valentina. Just over and over and over again, every scene. There's one that you put particular note to, which is the interaction with Davy. Where he grabs her by the wrist, which of course is what Mia did.
Yeah, it's that amazing mirror.
Mia gave her a hug.
Yeah, because like
Carson gave her a shout. Sorry, not Carson. Davy gave her a shout.
Yeah, because like Mia grabs her by the wrist, and it's like it's that moment, and that's in 3.1 where Valentina is scared, and she's like thinking of Mia as that clenched fist ready to hit her, and then instead of like clutching onto her wrist, she turns her hand over and like holds her hand softly, and it's that like that's that moment where Valentina feels like accepted as part of the family. And then obviously we see it kind of in the reverse here, where Gio is freaking out and worrying and thinking that basically everything's dead to her, like she can't go to school, everyone's gonna hate her, they're gonna like attack her, and like Davy is trying to be supportive, but like I mean not in a good way, but like
I don't know what to call the way that he treats her then. But what I note in it is how much he centers the family. So his investment on her behavior is how it reflects on him.
Yeah, how it reflects on him and how it reflects on all of their family and like the honor of the family and stuff like that. Which but then that wrist grab is like that turning moment really, where he grabs her wrist and then he like as she's reaching for him like to be held, to be comforted, and then he just swaps in and just like immediately like that stops and it swaps to Giovanna and she's just like scared absolutely shitless from that moment on, and like that's like the clenched that's the quote unquote clenched fist, except he does it with a smile, which is horrible,
disgusting,
really gross.
And the fact that that pain ripples out throughout time, like he tells her don't be a child. And it's because of that when she could have maybe received the sort of support that she was looking for, that base level, like bottom of the hierarchy of needs, just like a hug. She doesn't seek it out from her brother because she's not a child. And if she's not a child, she doesn't need that, right? And that in turn causes her to spin out more. And like seek like any contact elsewhere. And that note in 3.3 recontextualizes her conversation with Josie in 3.2 because she's reflecting on how like on Ben's creep shots and her opinion there. And sort of a drive-by self-deprecation hits Josie and like insults her appearance. But a pretty like knowing that Valentina has had context and like direct experience with that sort of predatory behavior, we can connect it out to see that her self-esteem is so low and her body image is so deplored that she's put a lot of thought into specifically this interaction in regards to how it reflects on her appearance. And that we know that when we had that conversation between Valentina and Carson back in I believe it was 2.4 or so,
something like that, yeah.
There was that whole thing of Carson trying to build her up a little bit and like try and impress any sort of value of her body onto her. And that was just, we now know, completely barking up the wrong tree. Like the just an incorrect angle for her. In the same way that we now know that just as she is latched all the way onto Mia and Carson and the new family because she needed that, it is as much repulsion from Davy, having seen on the cameras what he did to her brother.
Oh God, what a horrible little section where she's just, and I don't know if like seeing the damage done to him, I was like, oh yeah, I remember that scene from Arc 1, like where Mia is looking at the cameras and like noting all of the ways that Davy has beat this kid. And I was like, yep, I recognize that. That's fucked. That's real bad. Poor Valentina. Like, it's horrible, kind of, that only, like, that one small part of her family life that she didn't hate, basically. And she has to see it be brutalized.
And the thing that is wrapping all of this together is the tone of her internal narration. There's this moment, very beginning of 3.3, first interactions with Highlander. Well, I don't know why I keep saying Highlander, Highland. It's like I keep thinking that he's a superhero. Like, I have the high ground. That's my entire power. She has this moment where she's reaching for any metaphors or frames for her to understand what's even happening to her. And not long after that, she's reflecting on how she's had this just absolute cramming of life lessons, like going the speed run from single mother to like working adult to like all the way out from not even having washed her own clothes before. And the thing I'm trying to get at with touching on those notes is that she's a child. Like even as she is like coming into adulthood, the degree that she has the sort of base levels of skill, base levels of confidence, base levels of wisdom and understanding, the way that her experiences are piled in on each other is just this loop of trauma that has contained her ability to be a grown and like well-rounded person. And to build all of that sympathy and then conclude it with the mutilation of Addie, especially because that is what Davy does to people. Just instead of a scalpel, she has a box cutter. It's a direct like charting of how the cycle of abuse continues. We follow it step by step. And I mean, goodness gracious. This was rough to read before going on stage yesterday night.
I mean, it was rough to read in general, like, I don't know. I do really like it. Like, I really, really liked it. But it was such a brutal section, and it's so cruel in a way. And yet, like, she just doesn't think about it. And then, like, right after she carves Addie's face open, she's like, I might be done, like, on looking after the prisoners. Like, I shouldn't look after them. And Hyland's like, the fuck? Yeah, like, of course you shouldn't. Like, are you going to do this to the others? And she's like, oh, probably not. And he's like, probably, like, like,
probably?
yeah, like, my God.
But like, I think this is such a correct depiction of adolescent crime. Like it comes from coming from this place of incredible physical and emotional exertion. This person pops out the other side and is looking back like in a daze, confused at how much wrong has just been done by her own hands.
Yeah.
And just the frontal lobe is like just sort of leans back and goes, maybe that was the wrong thing to do.
Yeah.
I appreciate that Hyland is now has to cope with the situation.
Yeah, poor bastard.
But I'm wondering how 3.4 opens now. Because does it open with a conversation about everything we just learned in 3.3? I don't know how you can even summarize that.
Yeah.
I don't know how if Valentina even has the ability, if she were even if she were at rest, even if she were cared for, I don't know if she could even articulate everything that she's gone through that led to that moment.
I don't I don't think she could. Yeah.
So like Hyland sits her down and goes, what the fuck was that? And Valentina says, she bullied me in high school.
Yes, yeah. She's like, oh my God. Yeah. I don't know.
Understatement of the century.
Yeah. I'm very excited for 3.4, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have made some general notes and I want to make a couple of comments. So I do really like, there's this moment that's like almost like a blink and you'll miss it moment, where Josie mentions that Carson has told her, not Mia, but Carson has told her that they might have to suddenly leave town because of Mia's mum, which I think is really like a very nice bit of characterization for Mia, because obviously the last time we saw her with her mum, it was, like 10 years ago, and her mum was saying like, get out, I don't really care about seeing you. And Mia's like, oh, I'll pop my number on the fridge just in case you need help with anything. Or like a nursing home or something. And her mum's like, not calling you, gonna die, don't give a fuck. And I really like that this kind of shows that even after that, like, interaction, Mia is still gonna keep some tabs on her. And like, if something happens, yeah, Mia and Carson are ready to skip town for a week or two, to, help her out. Which, I don't know, I really like that.
I mean, that's one way of reading it.
Okay.
When I read it, I was like, "Oh, bullshit!" I didn't buy it for a second.
Interesting. Okay.
But I also know that Carson's approach to the truth and to lying is often that skillful telling of some part of the truth. And so when I read that, I thought, oh, when he says Mia's mum, he implies to help her. But it could just as easily mean, I understand that Mia's mum posed a threat to Ripley being my child. So
oh, that's dark.
So he says to Josie, oh, we might have to leave town due to Mia's mum. And then the in brackets is, because if she finds out that we have 2 kids, she will know.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, that's definitely not how I read it, but that is a fun way to read it. Yeah. Definitely says very different things about the characters, whichever way you read it, but I can see both being realistic.
Good of Carson to arm Josie,
Yeah, exactly.
Give her some actionable information.
Yeah. I did also, there's this moment where Valentina has been like thinking a lot about like what Mia has like said and like how Mia has tried to equip her and tell her all of these things. And then she just notes for a moment that she misses Carson too. And it's like she hadn't thought necessarily fondly of Mia in those like paragraphs before that. It was more like, this is what Mia has done. Like, she told me all of these things. And then she's like, oh yeah, but I also miss Carson. So it's like, I just thought that was really sweet that like, even though this situation is fucked up, Mia is kind of like forcefully adopted her. But she is very fond of Mia still. Like, she misses her. She wishes she was here to help and to like be the adult. And obviously the same with Carson. I don't know. I thought it was really sweet.
It is really sweet. At the same time, I feel like it's very bittersweet knowing that Valentina leaning all the way into these connections as quickly as she has is coming from that deep vacuum of any alternative relationship in her past life.
Yeah. I mean, I love a bittersweet moment. What can I say? I'm a real sucker for a bittersweet moment. So yeah, I really liked it.
Yeah, you gotta have strawberry jam with your Vegemite.
No, you don't. No, you fucking don't. You can just have Vegemite and you can just have strawberry jam separately.
It's important for your immune system. How are you supposed to fight up the spider venom?
You could just have them separately. This is completely I can't deal with that statement. No.
Anyway, next thing is
I mean, I just want to say, like, fuck Natalie Teal, okay? Like, she was pretty sympathetic for a while, and then we learned that, like, she set up a bit of, like, a charity thing to, like, try and help, like, kids that had gone missing, and then another mother in there, like, accused her of, like, using, like, the charity to, like, basically just focus, like, not really caring about any of the other kids, just her own. And then also she was siphoning, like, 15% of the money, like, that was donated to it. Which is pretty fucking scummy.
Listen. It's important that she reinvest in herself so that she can have the wellness and stylistic integrity and good branding so that she can continue to work in this very important sector.
Horrible. Genuinely horrible. Really, really fucked up shit.
I bet it makes perfect sense to her.
After
all, no one's disagreed with her, and she runs away from anyone who does, and blames them for hating her child. So, it's she hasn't really had to deal with anything as difficult as a direct rejection at this point.
Yeah, it's just so fucked.
I'm very interested to know Ben's dynamic with her.
So interested.
Because that 15% is probably his paycheck.
Well, I'm just wondering, like, is that 15% like what has been keeping her alive all these? Like, is that what she's?
Yeah, has she been working otherwise?
Yeah.
Like, is it just that she's been living off the donations? I don't know how much she has been, like, how much donations has come in, because fundraising is not especially lucrative.
No, but like big charities can be, and I don't know. It kind of sounds like the charity was, because like she was national news for a while, so like enough that like Josie recognized her. So I don't know. She may have stolen a lot of money. And then also there's that moment where like Valentina is connecting Natalie to Mia and Carson and being like, oh shit, like, she's looking at the kids. So one of those kids is her kid that went missing. Like, what the fuck? And then she kind of thinks for a moment, like, am I on the right side? Like, should I be helping Natalie and Ben? Like, am I doing wrong here? Which I think is so interesting.
It's a very normal thing to ask.
Yeah.
But it's especially a loaded thing for a teenager to be asking, because Valentina's had no involvement with making this dynamic happen. So her ability to pick sides and choose to support whoever she thinks is best is a lot more fluid than the individuals that have built up these like structures of direction and blame around them. So I think Valentina is probably in a very interesting position to actually hear Natalie's perspective.
Yeah.
Where if Mia and Natalie just spoke to one another, it would be an argument and then probably a fight and then probably a battle to the death.
Yeah, I think that sounds right.
I'm interested to know if she'll follow this thread, because it could be that if we're wondering about this relationship between Natalie and Ben, it might be it's through Valentina that we even begin to learn what that dynamic is, where she's coming from, what her personal justifications are. And all of it is happening without Valentina knowing that her little sister Ripley is the person in question, which
good.
Might then bring her own personal value into it and send things in a completely different direction, revealing that information to her. So I really am looking forward for that bubble to pop.
I think everything with Natalie and Ben and Ripley is like so, again, it's so juicy. Like there's so much there to dig into, and
possibly there are next arc perspective.
That would be,
or perspective to come.
Crazy. Yeah. This is one of those things, like, I trust Wildbow, like, absolutely with this book, like, and in general with his writing, I trust him that he's going to do what is, like, a really, really good and interesting perspective. So, like, no matter who we go to, like, next arc, I think it's going to be awesome. But fuck, that would be juicy, though. Like,
imagine if
a Ben
every
arc.
arc of this story was a different perspective on a whodunit.
Ah,
Like, we go from the whodunit phase of Mia and Carson and end up at the Hal Catch'em phase of Natalie and Ben. And it's like Columbo meets, every piece of objective fiction. It's the ultimate crime procedural, every step.
oh, it'd be so good. Like, but yeah, like, no matter which way Wildbow goes with it, like, I know it's going to be fucking awesome, but God, that's a spicy way to go with it, and it would be really cool. I did want to mention, like, everything about, like, Ben doing the creep shots, like, genuinely fucked. Like, genuinely fucked. And then, like, the way that they note that he's doing the creep shots, and so they report him in, and then they get the call back being like, no, he had a good reason for doing so. Oh, somebody else vouched for him. It's like, fuck off. Like, there's no amount of vouching for that means that you can go to a school ground and, like, just take creep shots of the kids. Ugh. No.
Like, I've worked in productions where, like, there has been publicity material. And on the few occasions where actors have been below the age of 18, that's meant that the consent paperwork for being photographed and having images of you dispersed has to be signed by parents. And I don't know if that's a New South Wales law. I don't know if it's just good common practice. But what I do know is that I think it's an excellent common practice that should be upheld everywhere. So the fact that with a sort of hand wave, the authority who's been convinced by two people, probably Ben was vouched for by Natalie, with all of her social momentum and, like, that strange people staying away from her, but also people supporting her perspective balance. Between those two things, those kids are now being photographed and their parents have not been consulted. I think that amounts to a violation of privacy.
Absolutely it
so
does.
I guess I need to make a new folder on the rap sheet for Ben and start with creep shots of children.
Yeah.
I don't know what the fine is for that, but I hope it's high.
It fucking should be. Like, oh, it's just so gross. And then they note that, like, oh, we're banning him from the school grounds. But, like, was he even on the school grounds when he was taking the creep shots? Or was he, like, outside the school grounds, like, just on the side of the road?
Wow, that's not better.
Yeah, like, it's a nothing. Like, I don't know, it's fucking gross. Like, yeah, I don't know. I'm just, like, fairly grossed out by that entire thing. Yeah.
At some point, I'm left with the question of why does he need anything more than a, like, yearbook?
Yeah.
Why is it that he can't just, like, get a directory and study it one time? Why does he need photos of the kids?
Yeah, and because he was there the day before, Josie noted, like, taking photos of Ripley and Tia and her, and then also other kids, and it's like, ugh, like, why do you need hundreds of photos? You know, like,
yeah.
Beyond the fact that you've been here taking photos, like, you're back here taking photos. Like, what the fuck?
And we know AI is in this story, because Davey uses it. The only reasonable guess that I could think of, if it could even be called reasonable, is he's getting training data for some machine. Just like, even within that justification, the training data that goes into the AI that we have today, the generative AI, which is really just autocomplete on steroids. There's a lot of foul practice involved in getting that much information. Like, we could talk about the people that are paid less than minimum wage to train on the algorithms on dark web material. So every photo is a violation of some human right or another. This would be the story for that kind of thing to be put forward. But inherently, there is, to that kind of mechanism, I think a like blows the case wide open reveal on what's horribly wrong about needing that much information, which is that you have to put real people in front of a camera.
Mhm.
And like, would anyone, if one person in that photo would grow up to say that they did not want hundreds of photos of them taken to train a machine,
Mhm.
then the photos shouldn't have been taken.
Yeah.
And if their parents would say it right now, I think it is important that that would be the case anyway. And so as we walk back from what I think is the only justifiable hypothetical for why he would even need these, like the only good purpose that I can think of, to whatever any other reason he might have, all of them lesser, it's like you don't need this much forensic evidence. You
Yeah.
could be much more direct with this. So what more foul motivation do you have, Ben? And
Ugh.
the fact that this is like the Natalie is reflecting very poorly on this man, I think. Now that we know that she is the sort of person to take 15% of donations for herself and
Yeah.
take a charity for supporting children that are missing just to try and find her kid.
Yeah.
Suddenly the question of what is it that is motivating Ben to put in this kind of work is looking very dark. My first guess would have been like seeing them together at the very top would have been, oh, maybe they're together in some way, maybe there's something romantic going on there. This is sort of inexplicably foul.
Yeah. Yeah. It's truly gross. Yeah. They're together, or maybe he's hoping for a fucking fat payday at the end, or
maybe he's already had it. Maybe it's got a forward.
Yeah.
And within this, to take a different direction, shout out to Josie. Holy shit. Like, I don't know how Mia managed to get someone this well equipped for looking after her kids.
Yeah.
I understand that she is motivated by the tickets to Atru, which is cute. And also very sad that Valentina tried to tell an old joke from her old life and it didn't land. I hope it becomes a bit between them and that they communicate with that gag in future just so that she can recover that scar.
Oh, that was heartbreaking. Like, that was so brutal.
Like, that is such a person adrift from their past moment, like just reaching out with whatever tool has, like, broken tool is left over. But Josie is so on her game.
Oh, yeah.
Like tears, gently pissed on pants are just like with a backhanded gesture. They like a mention of superheroes, and immediately Tira's changing clothes, and it doesn't even become a problem. It's not even the focus.
Yeah, she's so good.
This is like parenting foo over here. I really hope that Mia has made it worth her while, because she's putting up with a lot. I mean, and apparently questioning none of it.
And the other, like, I forget which other parent, the parent of Random did note that Josie was very expensive, and I think that that's just because Mia is like really, put her standards of pay up. So,
well, hey, one way to confirm quality.
Yeah. Yeah, Josie's so good. I did want to talk very quickly about, like, Highland has this moment where after our Boxgo guy says about, the prisons in Norway, Highland says, oh, it's still America for now. And I thought that was, like, really interesting. And then he notes, like, then and the Boxgo guy says, like, oh, you think they're going to win? And he's like, well, they're not going away or losing. So is it like the civil warriors that are, like, trying to secede? I don't know. I'm just, I thought that was an important mention, like an important thing to flag.
I love pun. Civil War, civil warriors. I feel like that's pretty plainly what their motivation is here, and they did specifically talk about taking control from the government.
Yeah.
The thing that I note about it, in 3.3, there's that mention of the dragons, like Stephen Long, who was part of the Yellow Bus event, where a whole bus is taken hostage and kidnapped. And there's this moment where Valentina reflects on how, despite all of the knowledge being out there, it still became a conspiracy theory that blamed Middle Eastern people.
Oh, yeah.
And I believe it was in 1960 that a FBI leader said that we will have succeeded when everything the American public believes to be true is false. And for that to have not just fully happen, but automatically happen, like even as like these sort of crises are happening day to day to day, like there's that moment just offhand where as Geo, Valentina is walking through her school, and there's just a new memorial because something else of that like level of tragedy has happened, and it's gone over the old one. Like this sort of yellow bus event happens with like enough frequency that there are multiple varieties of drill that people go on frequently enough that they're wondering when the next one is for a school assembly. And it is now fully automatic that groups like the Civil Warriors just have their PR scrubbed. It's one of those just throwaway dystopic elements. I mean, there's a few in this spread of chapters.
Yeah, like these just small moments of this like complete dystopia. Like there's one mentioned in 3.3, where like Valentina or Geo at the time notes that like ashes falling from the sky, which we're very used to for the modern part of the story, but this is like a little bit back, and it's noted that organized groups went in and burned the national parks. Like what the fuck? Like there's no like protest to that even, like there's nothing that does or helps other than saying like fuck this world, fuck the parks, fuck nature. Like horrible. Genuinely, like that moment in 3.3 really got to me, like just because like what the fuck.
It's so abundantly harming just everyone and not the system.
Everyone
like
and everything.
No part of the civil infrastructure is built into the national parks. Those are just the lungs of the planet. Like the way that Max puts it, of they're not losing or going away, as like eventually they're just gonna deplete all the possible targets. So I think the initial implication is that it's still America for now, so the Civil War will replace America with something else. But I'd be just inclined to think that Max's perspective is not someone's going to win, but rather that everyone is going to lose. And that it will just be a total collapse eventually.
Yeah, look, I wouldn't be surprised if that's his perspective. He's pretty jaded, pretty bitter, I think, by the whole thing, which I think is reasonable. Claw is like the world of Claw is in a bad state.
I want to take a moment to note that Hyland's jaded state is a really good compliment to Valentina's. We have someone who is not just on the like opposite end of maturity, where like he's not only just a fully grown adult, but he's also a deprogrammed adult, where he's become disabused of all of the things that he was raised with, and is now living in distinct contrast to the values he had as a teenager. Whereas Valentina is on the start of that journey, and has just gotten out of the environment that like put her in the condition that she's in, and is now flailing for a new network. And especially knowing that they have a change of name in common. They have Hyland has resettled before, but now Giovanna has become Valentina. The fact is that I believe the conversation where we don't know if Valentina even has the ability to articulate what's happened to her, it will be with a person who has a great deal of sympathy for that circumstance. And we know that she is the sort of loose end of a father figure, and that she misses Carson and she misses Mia, but there haven't been very much time with either of them at all. To then be spending this time with Highland, I think, is an opportunity for her to learn from someone that has a lot of what she ought to learn from someone she has a lot to learn from. So I'm really looking forward to that. Especially as a thing for Highland, because we have this question of Highland has this unresolved connection with Mia, and is in these last few chapters giving Carson a lot of loyalty, giving Mia a lot of loyalty. Now all of that care has latched onto Valentina in the same way that Valentina is latching onto other people. And that's part of why I feel it is relatively reasonable to feel that they're safe in each other's company. Like it's not just that he had a 5-star rating on Criminal Yelp. He really is a good match and role model for her in this situation, and really will be making sure that she's safe, which is a big relief, because it is what she needs right now, and it's an impossible ask otherwise. But, I don't think that when we were introduced to Max in 2.1, anyone could have guessed that would be a part of his contribution to the story.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I feel like even in that moment where he's, so angry at her at the end of 3.3, after she's cut open Addie, I think we just see, an excellent contrast between, his anger and Davy's anger. Because we know that, Davy's anger is a smile and a steady hand and an even voice as he, does something fucked up. After he beat her brother half to death, he walked out and, Davy walked out and, made a phone call and very calmly and, smiled and all that. And when Highland, sees something fucked up that Valentina did, he's, yelling, what the fuck did you, what is happening? Get out of here. What are you fucking doing? Yeah, it's that. And because we saw that anxiety in 3.1 of if Valentina doesn't know how she's going to be treated, she's going to assume that it's going to be the worst. But
But now she knows that Max will be emotionally honest with her.
Yes.
But would never hit her or anything like that. No.
Exactly.
He's a responsible parent.
Yeah, he's not going to beat her, but he might yell at her if she cuts someone open. Which I guess...
Now, Valentina, go to your room. I'm going to hold Addie's head over the toilet so she bleeds into the toilet.
Oh, brutal, but so good. Yeah, I don't know. I really, I like them together as as a parental figure. And there's that moment in, at the start of 3.3 where Valentina kind of wonders if Max even killed that guy, or if he was just doing it for her benefit. And I don't know, I don't think he's that kind of dude. I think that guy was clinging on to life and Max was I'll mercy kill him. I don't think he's the kind of guy that would be well, she killed him, but I'm just gonna make sure that she's okay by pretending that he's not dead. I don't think that's in his skill set. That's something Carson would do.
It struck me as a very teenage mindset of reading intentional personal attack or intention into an action that might have had nothing to do with you. And because there is that great arc of growing old where you first have to become aware of yourself as an independent person, and then aware of other people as independent people, and then synthesize those two into a understanding where things can be either both or neither. And having her constantly be trying to work out that mental arithmetic in her head was part of the verisimilitude of this. That's the word. Living in the world of this teenage character. There's this note here of we've talked about her experience with violence and the disassociative state in which she mutilates Addie, and like father, like daughter, I guess it's a perpetuation of the cycle of abuse. And regardless of how maybe Addie's treatment of her caused that, it really is scapegoating. Because it's no part of that material violence does anything to correct any of the and heal any of the damage that's been done. It's just satisfying for a sense of vengeance.
Yeah.
But we have her this moment at the very beginning of 3.3 where she like Max tells her to go into the other room, and she decides to stay and watch. And she's connecting it as like this man is getting a abrupt and quick neck massage because I've already killed him. And taking a sort of responsibility for that. And this girl is so insulated from the world and so ephemeral to it. Like, she has so few practical skills to impact the world that she lives in. She has so few practical connections to find autonomy in or affect change. She's used to being surveilled. She's used to comporting herself as though everyone is looking at her and making fun of her because they were.
Yeah.
And for all of that to manifest as this need to take responsibility for her action and to like watch someone die is like I think it is when a sort of a continuous beat throughout Claw that like when we see Mia steal Ripley, when we see Carson kill Tyr's parents, and now when we see Valentina mutilate Addie, each of these crimes are coming from just absolute overloads of perception until they just sort of happen. And like there was, especially for Carson, there was that conversation of culpability. Like, was like what Bolden asks, where you've killed before, were you born the sort of person that can kill, or did you become it? Where did you learn? And Carson says, I don't think that there is nearly as much distinction, and we both know that there's not nearly as much distinction. And that is a strange response to blame. It's saying, it does not matter if it happened to me or if it was in my nature. I have no excuse, or there is no explanation. And so for each of these crimes to be coming from a place of mindlessness, of like it's happening almost off screen, or it's we enter into it as it's happening, or like Carson barely even considers the murders as he's doing it. He's just reflecting on
it's very mechanical again.
It's very mechanical. It's a satiation of a feeling. For Valentina to be seeking out the ability to claim responsibility, the ability to blame herself, I think is this also it's a satiation of a lack of control over the things that she has done wrong. Like, she's been born into a crime family and then blamed for those things. She's run away from a monster, and that's caused her brother to be beaten. But that might have happened anyway for any other reason. And the unfairness there, the injustice of that she is being blamed for things that she didn't do, then leads to her taking on more emotional blame for things that she can be less blamed for, as trying to level out the playing field. And there's all of this, I think, is connecting into some larger thesis as to justice in Claw, where there is again and again horrible things being done on this like primal level, where there's like minimal meditation, there's minimal awareness in the moment, and the consequences, the damage done is massive. It is mutilating, it is traumatic, it changes the course of whole lives. And especially seeing the way Valentina responds to that sort of situation, where she seeks out blame and tries to be in a situation where she could be called culpable and called to account. Like, I will watch this man die because I believe I killed him. Is I think another jigsaw piece for that grand puzzle. All of this, I believe, is going to be much less fun than the Lucy is best girl essay, which is the one that I want to do for Pale. But Injustice and Claw is percolating rapidly.
Yeah.
If I don't just get all of my thoughts out on it out here on the podcast.
Yeah. No, it's very interesting. I think injustice is definitely a theme in the modern world at the moment. I don't want to get too deep into like politics and modern stuff, but
hey, the themes of Outside are very compelling. I think Planet Earth is going through a very interesting arc right now.
Yes.
But I feel like it'd be a very different podcast if we got into the literary analysis of the news media complex. As engaging as that content can be, it's very impressive that they get a 24-hour cycle up there. Wildbow gets 2 chapters out a week, but Outside is constantly churning out new content.
It's crazy. Yeah, but I definitely think like Injustice has been a talking point in the zeitgeist for the last couple of years, which I think is good. And I do think that we're definitely seeing that reflected in Wildbow's writing, because it's a big topic, and it doesn't stop coming up in the real world, so why stop writing about it, I guess, when you have things to say. Okay, do we want to talk about the themes? Or have I skipped things?
I think I want to take one more moment. Well, actually, we can fold this in. We have this focus in these chapters on the terminology of dragon. And for a moment, when Valentina is reflecting on Mia and Carson being dragons by their own terminology, my first thought was, oh, what a compliment to themselves. They're calling themselves dragons. No wonder you saved the coolest name for you.
Yeah.
We've talked in previous week of claw as a verb, of clawing at something, of clawing this swiping action. And dragons have claws, of course. What is it that a dragon claws together? It lairs and it hoards. It digs a lair for itself, or claims a cave, and then gathers a great collection that it sits on. And just it's the action of coveting. Nordic dragons are typically, if you look more towards like the dwarvish ones, there's the big theme of greed, and that's reflected in like Smaug in Lord of the Rings. The essence here is that to claw is to claw a life together and then hoard it violently. Be taking it in a big way. They're taking the value and resources of others, and sitting on it because that's where it's valuable. It's valuable if you have it. I think, for one, it might mean that we see more of the likes of Stephen Long, who was involved with the Yellow Bus, and Lauren Michelle Ledbetter from the Thornton Pack. Maybe we'll hear from Charlie Pullen, but that would certainly be appealing to this covetous angle, especially when our main antagonist, Davy, is the ultimate dragon because he keeps people forever.
Yeah. Horrible.
The only other element that jumped out to me of the nominative deterministically claw making itself relevant as to this arc and the chapters. We also have Scrape, of course, and Valentina really scraped the claw of that knife over Addie's skin, huh?
It's somewhat of a stretch, but it's funny.
I mean, I may be punning for it, but as far as this being a really meaningful moment for the themes of the story, this is the moment when Valentina becomes a criminal. This is something like unless you want to really get her in for impersonating a delivery driver.
That's pretty bad.
Which is, I mean, really, I feel if we were going to hold that against her, we would also to put onto the rap sheet that she's already been fined for being a slow delivery woman, which is a crime otherwise punished by death. Imagine tipping culture getting so bad you have to tip your customers. But the thing, this is the point where Valentina does something that would put her to prison, and it's clawing at just the satisfaction of vengeance, and it wounds someone permanently, just like when Mia coveted and what was Natalie's and ends up taking Ripley. And I don't mean that in the biblical terminology, which puts different meaning into covet. I mean to say that the action that is happening here is Valentina has crossed a line, and is now part of the criminal underground in a way that is her choice. Like she could have argued that the man that she killed, in quote marks killed, was more due to Mia or more part of Mia, and like anything that she was involved with as Giovannia, when of course she was born in that family, like how much autonomy can she have? This is something that purely comes from her.
Yeah.
It's as far as it linking into themes, this is her like entering into the criminal as someone that has clawed and scarred the world.
Yeah, I like that. That's good stuff. Okay, so do we want to talk about some bold and specific predictions?
Yes, and
yeah,
Kippos, I this is a very serious matter, and I think we should talk about it as co-host to co-host. I don't believe in cultivating parasocial relationships. I think it's unhealthy. I think it's unrealistic.
Really?
I also think it's presumptuous to think that Wildbow is even up to date with our podcast.
That's fair.
I felt personally attacked when in
a little called
Scrape 3.3, a little bit called out, when Geo asks her friend groups to not ship every week. And given that is something that verbatim we have been doing, I have decided to go vegan or landlubber, and do no shipping for not just this week but next week as well. If I truly did care, if I had a sincere and valuable and valid investment in these relationships, then if I love it enough, I can let it go, you know? So I am abstaining from any bold and specific BS ship predictions for this week.
Right.
Instead, I'm going to do a nice and a normal and balanced prediction. I think that Valentina and Josie will be friends. I think they'll get along really well, and that's all, and that nothing else will happen there.
That's nice.
And that's my prediction.
My prediction is, you've done well. You've done so well. I'm really proud of you.
Self-control is hard, but it's a muscle, you know. You got to work it out, you know.
You really do.
I'll build the strength.
Yeah. So along those lines, I guess, I mean, I just really think that my bold and specific prediction this week is that Josie and Valentina are going to date.
Kippos.
I'm sorry, I'm not as strong as you, okay? I can't do it.
For
I just can't
shame.
do it.
You won't be joining me on land? You're going to sail the 7 seas of love?
I guess maybe for just this. I don't know if I can hold out for next week as well. But I mean, I guess I've already done one technically this week, so maybe I will have to try and hold out next week. Okay. This week, my bold and specific prediction is that Addie is gonna have to get surgery from the Angel of Death, and it's gonna make everybody sad, and she's gonna be very sketchy about what's happened here. That's my bold and specific prediction.
I think I'd like to build on that. I think that Valentina mutilating Addie is going to be one of the ways that Davy figures out that Valentina is running with the Mia and Carson's crowd.
Yeah, I can see it.
I also expect that the characters that are name dropped, the dragons, and the what's they called, the Thornton Pack, once led by Charlie Pullen, that they'll be entering the story as part of that sign off in 3.3 of revitalizing as many old enemies as possible, so that Davy will be preoccupied.
That's fine. Okay. All right. So shall we go to our discussion question?
Sure.
Okay. So last week we asked,
what would your name look like as a neighborhood? Megafire said that the name Peter, which I can only assume is not Megafire's name, has a lot of nice circles in it, especially if you connect the letters properly. I have also been on an urbanism kick for a good while now, and this seems like the perfect setup for proper public transport. Turn the centers of those E's into some nice parks to hang out in, while the remains of the T make for a nice commercial street, the variety of clothing and bookstores. The E's have the bars and restaurants. The big straight P probably has some offices, and the R and remains of the E are low-rise apartment buildings. The whole thing looks like a small, modern European city neighborhood, which I think sounds delightful.
That does sound adorable. It sounds like one of those little 15-minute cities, which, hell yeah.
Big fan.
Big fan. All right. And then Dante from Twigging Onto Twig says that they don't really think they have a clear understanding of how the name to neighborhood thing works, which reasonable. It's really, it's difficult. But they can't help but feel like the name Dante would end up looking a lot like medieval Florence, which is cute. I like that.
A lot of waterways. I'm thinking of Venice.
You are thinking of Venice.
Well, hey, I'm bleeding from an open wound on my side. How am I supposed to do accurate analysis at this time of day?
Exactly.
Cyrano de Bergerac has a username long enough that you could probably fit the entire setting and plot of the French play Cyrano de Bergerac into it, which I think is an excellent answer.
It's a pretty good answer, yeah. So, for our answers for this week, for this discussion question, Dante, I agree with you. This was too hard for me. I couldn't do it.
You're not going to talk about the Kippo Depot?
I'm not going to talk about the Kippo Depot. I feel like this kind of comes into a similar thing that has come into a lot of other verse discussions, where you kind of really, really need to know yourself really well to talk about this stuff. And I don't. I just don't know myself that well. So I'm sorry, I can't answer this.
I thrive on those discussions and got my start in the community with the Power for a Name games back for Worm. So this is exactly the sort of thing that I would have loved to spend a lot of time on. However, I did have some misadventures this last week. The thing that struck me about Vice Versailles is that it's a very long name, and because of the capital V on the second word, I sort of figured that as like a hill. So where in New South Wales there's this big water table rise down to the water, I figured that Vice would be lowland, then up over to the capital V like a mountain, and then down the valley into Versailles. So maybe like a nice little like in vein of Versailles, the Vice could be a compact little neighborhood or fort with like a couple of supporting simple things like, I don't know, a tailor's or a couple like craft stores in the sea as like you can sort of walk along this arc and go to your smith's workshop, go to your jeweler, and then the capital V into the Versailles, just sort of this sprawling garden, and sort of a crossroads between Outback Oz and the Garden of Versailles, where it's like well kept, and then all the individual letters, the like gaps between them are like little settlements or little villages. So I really think of it more as like a long boulevard or like a major like single street town. And of course, because I am talking about meeting French and Australian styles together, the S has to stand for servo. So there's a pit stop before the rest of the valley sprawls out. And I just think it would be a nice place to spend time.
Yeah, it sounds nice.
This week's discussion question is...
If your friendship group had to drop a topic for a week, which one would be hardest?
We will be able to answer this next week because we will have tried to drop shipping as a topic for the entire week.
It's going to be impossible. I can't do it.
I'm going to gather all of my strength and not talk about the Sax ship even once.
Not even mention it by name.
Not even mention it by name. I won't talk about Sax at all.
Yeah, so thanks for listening to our show.
Check out Wildbow's Patreon at patreon.com/Wildbow. This is his highly selective high school. We're just feeding slander and memes into its social media.
And please give us a rating and a review on the podcatcher of your choice.
If you want to chat to us about the show or follow along with live reads, check out our channel on the Doof Media Discord. Find this invite link at doofmedia.com/Discord.
And we'll see you next week.
Bye-bye for now.